The previous basket is under review.
Back to Stats by Will and Jim, the college basketball podcast that focuses on the numbers. We are back under the Basket Under Review umbrella. Not that we ever left that particular umbrella, but we are Basket Under Review. Jason, please check out the site and the Discord. Only $10 a month gets you access to everything coming out on the site, and the content is really flowing. We had an incredible Jordan Majeski guide to opening night come out today. We're recording this on Tuesday. So if you're hearing it on Wednesday, go back to yesterday's content and check that out. All kinds of great breakdowns coming up of the games. We've got all our conference previews rolling out. Thank you to Will for helping with that. The 3-man weave previews, now the 4-man weave. But yes, $10 a month gets you access to all that, plus the Discord. Incredible written content, lots of chatter during the year. It's going to be popping all through college hoop season, so definitely check that out. But this is the Stats by Will and Jim SEC preview, zooming in on which number or stat will define the season for each of the SEC teams. Will, how are we doing? Both of our teams reside in the SEC. And my opening question to you is, will your Vols or my Tigers ever give us the long-awaited Final Four berth that we desperately hope for?
I think so, and it's solely because I had this running joke on Twitter for years that I'd die before the Lions won a playoff game, and they've now won 2 since I've been alive. So I do think happiness is possible. I mean, like the Blue Jays made the World Series last night, probably I guess 2 days ago, when people are hearing this. The the Giants pulled off the Northern Iowa, so I do think anything is possible in sport.
I like that mindset. Despite both of our baseball teams hurting us this October, that's okay. The Tigers and Brewers didn't quite get where we wanted them to. We didn't have the Stats by Will and Jim World Series, but that's okay. That's okay. We are focused on college hoops. As mentioned, it is the SEC preview. We always start with a stat of the day or a trivia question for Mr. Warren. Will, my question to you today, it is kind of the inverse, I think, of the ACC question. But we know the SEC had a phenomenal conference season last year. 14 of the 16 teams made the NCAA tournament. How many SEC teams of the 16 had their best season in the last decade per KenPom's overall net rating? So of the 16, how many had their best season? And bear in mind the rising tide of the 24-25 season that we saw last year as well.
Okay. I was going to ask if you meant ranking or rating.
Rating.
So
Yep.
Rating. Gotcha. Oh boy, I am going to wager 7 did.
Very, very close. It was 8. A full half the league had their best net rating.
Yeah.
Tennessee, sort of surprising, just considering some of the teams they've had. Auburn, it was actually Alabama's highest net rating, despite being the number 1 overall seed with Brandon Miller.
But that year was a really not crappy, but down across the board.
Exactly. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mizzou, and Georgia. So both of our squads, Tennessee and Mizzou, had their best net rating in the past decade. Can you name the 2 programs that actually, only 2 of the 16, had a net rating worse than their 10-year average? So a below average year.
I'm going to wager Texas.
Wow, I did not think you'd get that one. Well done. Well done.
Okay, Texas. I am thinking the other would maybe be... No. Actually, yeah, LSU. Let's say LSU.
Ding, 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 ding. Folks, this is why Will is a stat guru. He nailed that 2 for 2. That is not an easy question. But yes, both of them were just slightly below their own established Mendoza lines there. This is not trivia, but a fun fact. The SEC has led the country in block rate in 4 of the last 5 years and 13 of the last 18. Very athletic league. And then in the inverse, it has ranked top 20 in 3-point percentage just 3 times in the last 18 years and is 9 straight years outside the top 20. So
physical ass hoops.
Yes.
I love to be a hater sometimes. SEC basketball, that's what SEC football thinks it is.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
Real physical.
Yes, the free throw rate always high. I know SEC officials get a little bit of flack from the SEC fans, but I feel like every conference thinks they have the worst officials. So perhaps the SEC is right. We'll find out. I know we won't find out. That's subjective. But okay, before we get into the teams and go down Will's list of standings, we're going to give a shout out to Home Field, the best place for your college sports apparel. We love having Home Field sponsor the show. They've got comfy t-shirts, sweaters, joggers, jackets. They've got corduroy hats now. They've got more basketball gear coming to sync up with the launch of the season. So keep an eye out for some new offerings, some new deals. But in the meantime, please use promo code BURNER15 for your first purchase to get 15% off. That tells Home Field where you came from and really helps with the ad deal we've got going there. It's a win-win. You get money in your pocket and cool gear, and we get to tell Home Field that, hey, we sent people to your site. So it's a win-win. Go ahead and check that out. Homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, well, let's get into the standings. As usual, we're going 1 through 16 on your rankings, and I will go with the odd teams with the number that will define the year. You will take the even teams, and we'll discuss. But we're starting with number 1, Florida. And for me, the number that is really going to dictate it is the 2-point percentage of specifically Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee. They really struggled to finish at the rim at their previous stops. Fland's shot selection was quite bad at Arkansas. If we're trying to optimize things mathematically, John Calipari let him launch from the mid-range. I don't believe Todd Golden and the analytically savvy Florida staff is going to let him do that. And then you also just have the major boost of playing with this front court. The seals and the Gortat screens that Florida's big men are known for gets a lot of open layup looks for the guards, and all 4 of their perimeter players last year saw a clear boost in finishing percentage at the rim, and I think that really tells you the value of playing with Micah Handlockton and Alex Condon sealing at the bucket. Can Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland benefit from that? That's going to be a big thing to watch, just whether they can finish efficiently inside.
Yeah, and I think that Florida's been pretty good about, like some mid-range jumpers are fine. Like it was obviously okay if Clayton took one last year. They're kind of okay if like Will Richard or Elijah Martin took them. But I think they'll be okay if Xavier Lee takes them. Xavier Lee is really damn good off the dribble. But Boogie Fland taking, like 4 mid-range jumpers a game, not really something I'm into. His finishing was atrocious last year. I had to look it up really quick on Synergy. He finished shooting 38% at the rim last year.
Yeah, not good.
38. That is god awful for somebody who has, fair or not, NBA aspirations as a guard. Lee, not really much better in this, despite playing what I think we would objectively say is not a great strength of schedule. So scaling up there is going to be really important. I like both players a lot. I think Fland kind of got a little underrated last year. He was sort of the scapegoat for some of the Arkansas struggles early in the season. And I thought it was a little unfair to pin it all on him. It was more of a structural. I wrote about it really early in the season, how the front court didn't quite make sense with the back court. I think Cal just sort of misfired on the build there. So I don't totally blame him for that. But I think pinning him with Todd Golden and that staff is going to bring out the best of him. But I agree with you. The 2-point percentage here is going to be really telling. Is he going to default to old habits when it suits him?
Yeah, you don't want him to be just launching those pull-ups, and I don't think they're going to let him, like I said. But yeah, just is the finishing at Arkansas a symptom of that roster and that lack of spacing, or just is he not all that crafty? Does he not have the touch around the basket? He was kind of a get hot in high school, take some really tough deep shots and bury them, and perhaps he can still do that. The shot making, they'd love to see that translate with the loss of Walter Clayton on the perimeter, but yeah, can he continue to finish at the rim? I mean, Elijah Martin went from, he was 71% last year at the rim playing for Florida, a little bit over that. And at Florida Atlantic, he was not quite at that level. I'm waiting for it to load, only 61%. So you're jumping up 10% while playing in a more difficult league. I think that's telling, I don't think Fland's going to be 70%, but the way that those guys trended up last year definitely bodes well. This is not a stat here, but I will mention that Florida's schedule in the SEC is also something worth monitoring for people. It's like the inverse of last year. They do not play at Tennessee. They do not play at Alabama. I don't believe they play at Arkansas. They don't play at, there's one other really high-level team they don't play at. And they don't play at Kentucky until the last day of the season. So very friendly schedule. They get South Carolina twice. Very arguably the worst team in this conference. I think that sets up well for a really good campaign for Florida, and would expect them to be right in that 1 seed mix.
Yeah, they have, I would argue, the easiest strength of schedule in the SEC.
Yeah, Auburn. They
And
don't play at Auburn.
it is sort of a fallacy of like, you know, when you're the number one team, you probably should have the worst strength of schedule because you don't play yourself.
Yep.
And obviously, South Carolina is going to be last in that. But even so, like you can look at Kentucky's schedule, for example, and we'll get to them later. But I mean, they start at Alabama, they play at Tennessee, at Florida, even at A&M is a tough one later in the year, at Arkansas, at Vandy. They've got a hell of a slate in the SEC alone, and that doesn't count in some of their non-conference games that are going to be rough. So Florida does position themselves quite well for a repeat, both with the roster strength, the coaching strength, and with some of the schedule luck.
Yep, absolutely. It's just that unbalanced stuff. I hate it, but that's unfortunately the day and age we live in here with these super conferences. Speaking of which, we got to get through 16 teams. So let's move to number 2. Will, this would be your Volunteers, Tennessee. What are you zeroing in on for Rick Barnes' squad this year?
I'm zeroing in on if they go play action at the 1 yard line, man. I don't think you should do that shit. I was at I guess like it was like a family watch party for that. Quick aside, and you could feel. I'm sure you have felt this being a Mizzou football fan. Not to put shame on you, but you could feel the proverbial balloon deflate instantly. It was like all the air being sucked out of the room at once, and it was kind of funny if I wasn't a little bummed in the moment. Yeah. Like I'm not super emotionally invested in Tennessee football anymore, but I was like, damn, that was really brutal. To the basketball side of things, it's the same as it ever was. I'm looking at offensive efficiency. Not a coincidence to me whatsoever that the 3 Rick Barnes teams who have been 2 seeds, so the last 2 plus 18-19, his only 3 teams to finish top 30 in offensive rating. That's going to be a little difficult this year. I want you to guess for me how many members of this roster have made 10 or more threes in a college season before.
Definitely Gillespie. I think disgustingly Amari Abram probably has. I'll stop there, 2.
That is correct, okay. 2. That's not ideal because the drill down number here for me is 3-point percentage. So UT 75-11 the last 5 years when they shoot 34.5% or better from 3. That means a lot to me when, like I've mentioned, Gillespie and Abram are the only really proven shooters. Ament was fantastic as a shooter in high school and has really looked great at that at practice. I've asked around, trying to get some numbers, and he's consistently been at like 40, 41, 42% in practice shooting. I mean, even if you take 5% off of that for, a non-familiar gem, like 36% is still that's above average. That's a good year. And in high school, consistently at that 40 to 45% range. A lot of that was, pull-up jumpers. So I feel pretty good on that front. The problem, as I think we're detailing here, is that there's not a 4th. Jalen Carey, I guess you would have been one as the most proven next shooter, and I don't really feel great about that. The free throw numbers don't bode well for him. Tennessee has some interesting, I guess you would call like roulette chips here in terms of like find a shooter. Like Bishop Boswell was all right at it in high school. I'm not a big Boswell fan athletically whatsoever. He kind of knows his spots where to be on the floor, but he looked overwhelmed in small minutes last year, and I don't really know how you fix that in one off season. Amari Evans, much more known for defense and offense. He's kind of a Groa-Meshach, if that makes sense. And the early reports from asking around are that they are trying to teach JP Estrella and or Cade Phillips to shoot, which I'm not totally against. Estrella was like a stretch big in high school, and Phillips did shoot threes his senior year of high school, though not particularly well. I'm not against either of those options, but Tennessee kind of really needs one or the other, preferably both, but at least one, to shoot like, what would you say, like a couple a game?
Yeah, you want a little bit of volume. Like they don't need to be Igor Milicic spacing the front court, but something where the defense thinks about leaving the paint.
Yeah, like I think 2 a game from your 4 spot is what you're looking for. And I've just got to see it. I can't think of a better way to put it other than I've just got to see it. So, and I think Tennessee is a little lucky that this is their roster this year and not last year. I know that's easier said than done in this particular era of hoops, but like last year, I'd be a lot more worried about a deal where your 2 spots Abram and your 4 spot, I guess, like Ethan Butlerberg from Israel. We should also mention
Yeah,
here too.
Berg's the
Very
one
good
that
shooter.
I'm intrigued by. I wonder what he's able to do.
Yeah, it's just about how quickly he can scale to the college game. And I'm sure like it'll be easier when he's literally 23 years old. Again, maybe this is part of the retirement deal. Amazing that Tennessee was the school to get the 23-year-old sharpshooter Israeli and not Auburn. Like one of the most shocking developments in human history. I would say possibly why Bruce retired, I would argue. Um, but yeah, I think Tennessee, I'm looking for deep shooting. I know that's a high variance thing game to game, but as a season wide sample, that will tell a lot to me about because I think we're all in agreement. Like, I've yet to see anybody have Tennessee outside of the top 5 defensively. And while I think there could be holes there, like they could end up like 8th or something, everybody expects a base, you know, level of real high competence, like a very high floor defensively. That gives you a lot of room to mess up on offense. But I don't think Tennessee can mess up too much offensively if they want to, I mean, at worst, wear home uniforms the first 2 rounds of the tournament.
Yeah, I think the goal is higher now with Rick Barnes based on the success they've had recently, and just being awesome defensively and middling offensively isn't what they want. They want to kind of chase the Final Four and try to get there before Barnes retires, and they need somebody other than Ament to emerge as like that go-to perimeter threat with Gillespie, of course. But I think it's just nice to have that defensive floor because you like can't be bad. So Tennessee should be in strong shape. It's just how high does the ceiling ascend? All right, number 3 in Will's standings is Kentucky. I'm sure Big Blue Nation is going to chase you with pitchforks because you don't have them second, and they certainly probably believe they're first with their $22 million roster, and everybody else is broke. But I'm looking at something simple that I'm sure many others will cite with Kentucky, and that is the number of games played by Jaden Quaintance. Basically, what I want to get at here is what is he going to be in March? Is he ramping up where they're trying to figure out who to take minutes from? Or is he fully integrated by then where he's clearly the starting center? He's putting on incredible defensive showcases in the paint. I can't wait to see what their defensive rating is when he and Diabate share the floor. Like, good luck scoring against that pairing. Plus even Owe and Aberdeen on the perimeter. But yeah, I don't want it to be like late February and they're playing him 14 minutes off the bench and Garrison's playing 12 and Moreno's still playing 9 minutes a game and they're just trying to figure out the rotation. I think this needs to be closer to a finished product, which would mean Quaintance gets back, maybe start of league play in January and they really get to figure out what the best combinations are for their lineup. Because I think his defensive potential really dictates their ceiling because he is so good on that end.
Yeah, Quaintance, like I need to see him play quite a bit because I don't mind Brendan Garrison. I don't think he's a bad player whatsoever. I actually think he's a bit underrated in this Kentucky system, but he's not a guy that I want getting huge minutes. I feel like he's the perfect backup big. And with UK's like team as a whole, I kind of, especially this Jalen Lowe injury, it kind of seems, up and down of like, when he'll be back. I'm sure he will be back. Obviously, he's not out for the season, but he might miss like the first few weeks, which is a real bummer when you play Louisville on November 11 or MSU November 18. I worry less about like Quaintance and just more about who is the like elite 2-way player here. And I know a lot of people are going to stop me and be like, "Will, you forgot about Otega Owe." Okay, maybe. But I don't think that Owe is like a particularly plus offensive piece. I think he's very good, but I think he already had his breakout last year. And we've talked before, it's really hard to have a double breakout. You have to be like an exceptional talent to do that. And I think he's very good. But if he's just himself from last year, that's fine. But I wonder, and this is why I had Tennessee a hair ahead. I just think it's a little more reliable what Tennessee has and what Kentucky is trying to do.
Yeah, there's some other things with this Kentucky team too that it doesn't really fit the Mark Pope roster build in the past. Like we talked about this a little on the Burp show with Eamon Brennan about how some coaches maybe have tried to fix shortcomings of a team and gone too far the other way, almost away from their identity. And, Mark Pope has had great offenses with a ton of shooting and spacing, and this roster doesn't feel like that. Especially if Cam Williams doesn't end up being a key part of the rotation. Like, you really need Jalen Lowe to shoot. You need Owe to ramp up volume. I'm not sure all that's going to be there. And now this team's really defensive based. And has he proven he can have the elite defense? Not really. So it's a question of, does this roster construction work for Pope? And is there going to be enough shooting spacing to really be the offensive juggernaut that they've been in the past? Or do they have to win with defense, which they can with this personnel? No question about it.
They for sure can. And with Pope, like, I don't think of him as a truly bad defensive coach. Like, his COVID year BYU team was actually pretty good on that end. But I mean, this is year 11, right? 11 of him being a head coach. And we're talking about one top 40 defense. And I know, like, Utah Valley, you can sort of forget about that side of things. Like, that's pretty hard to build a top 20 defense there, obviously. But I did feel like last year's defense was particularly just awful at rim protection. And I kind of wonder, and you pointed out, did they overcorrect? I have an article coming out later this week about, what to look for from teams in the top 10 and, historically what lines up with teams who underperform versus over. And you can kind of look at this a little bit of like teams who maybe overcorrected on an issue as to, some that decline. I'm not saying Kentucky will do that, but that's my fear for them.
Yeah, and Kentucky was 16th in the SEC, dead last in 2-point percentage defense, 16th in non-steal turnover percentage. Like, they weren't really making people all that uncomfortable. And yeah, it does seem like the build is aimed to fix that, but do they have trade-offs in the other departments where they were number one in 3-point percentage last year? I don't think this roster is going to deliver that kind of offensive potency. No. All right, number 4. Back over to you, Will, for Nate Oates and the Tide of Alabama. What are you looking at here?
Funny we just brought it up, but opponent 2-point percentage. There's only really been one Oates team that was elite at this, and I'm sure you and I will know it immediately. It was the Bediako, that team, which was just unbelievably good defensively. But it's been the backbone of Alabama's better defenses. Even the less elite defenses have consistently been top 75, top 100 in opponent 2-point percentage. It was part of why I perhaps mistakenly felt a lot safer about last year's Alabama team than the one before it. I know the 4-seed group did make the Final Four, but I would argue last year's team was better. They just had the misfortune of being paired with Duke in their field.
Yep, exactly.
Top 100 in 2-point percentage defense, despite the schedule they play on a yearly basis, is honestly really impressive to me. And that's not counting even the fact that they played in a top 3 conference performance ever. And, top 6 in the league in 2-point percentage allowed, still pretty darn good. I've got to see that this year because I am concerned. I like Bull Bowen fine. I think he'll be, pretty good. But Noah Williamson, I was not really a big fan of that ad when it happened. And the more I've looked at it, I've become a bit concerned athletically about that transfer. This is key to me because they are similar to the UT stat earlier, 76-12 in the last 5 years when they hold their competition to 48% or worse from 2. And again, you think about the schedule they play, wildly impressive to do that roughly 18 times a season. How quickly those two can adjust really tells me a lot about Alabama's ceiling this year.
Yeah, and as you're kind of hinting at with the Williamson thing, not all 7-footers are created equal defensively. Williamson is not Bediako. He's not Cliff O'More.
Can you imagine Gabe Dines on this team?
Oh, God. Yeah, the eraser, the human eraser. Do you see he got a Rothstein shout-out recently? He basically was playing, called him a goalie, which I thought was really funny. But, not
all goalies are created equal.
Yeah, true. Part of the secret sauce, I think, for Oates is that they're trying to force the shot diet of heavy mid-range defensively, which helps the 2-point percentage. Obviously, less rim attempts is a very good thing. But they haven't been quite as elite as they are offensively in controlling, forcing mid-rangers the way they completely eschew them offensively. And without the same kind of rim protection, I do think that it could end up being a little bit of a weakness here. And the defense is always a little tougher for them because they're playing so much in transition, and those are inherently more efficient possessions than if you force the team to play in the half court and execute against a set defense. But he's had really, really elite defenses at Alabama, and I don't know that this personnel is going to get anywhere near that. And I think even Tide fans are probably open to that idea and understanding that's likely going to be the case this year, where they're not going to be as shut down at the bucket as they've been in the past.
But it will help that like Phylon, I think, is a really strong guard defender. Aiden Holloway showed me something last year a bit more.
Yeah.
Aiden Sherrill could be a really good swing piece for this team. I think if he can continue to improve defensively, this might not be as big of a worry. But it does seem like we're on the same page here of the back end of this defense. If it slips out from the perimeter, could be a real worry.
Yeah, exactly. And like you want a healthy right cell there, because I think he was always there, put him on the best opposing guard, and he's coming off a torn Achilles, so who knows if he's going to be ready for that. They also did say that Davion Hanna is like the best defender they've had since Herb Jones. And, Nate Oates is typically not a smoke blower in his press conference type stuff. He actually shoots it pretty straight. He'll say if he's down on a guy. So we'll see if Hanna actually makes that kind of impact defensively. I don't think anybody's Herb Jones. I'm skeptical of that, but I do buy the idea that he's a really advanced defender and is probably going to play because of it, especially if right cell is limited by the Achilles. So that's something to monitor for their defense as well. All right, number 5 in the standings here in Will's SEC is the Vanderbilt Commodores. That's a Tennessee man putting Vandy all the way that high, folks. So no bias involved here. This is just
what is their thing? It's like this, the V.
Yeah, the anchor. Yeah, exactly. They're showing it to the camera. I'm very anti-Vandy right now, Will, because College Game Day is headed there for the Missouri Tigers and the Commodores, and a game with playoff implications. This is our.
It's a huge Vandy time right now. Jay Cutler just got out of jail. Did you see that?
I did not. That's incredible.
Yeah, I guess he had a DUI a couple of years ago, and he did like a 3-day jail sentence to make up for it.
All right.
But Jay Cutler's out of jail, baby. He's going to be there.
All right, let's get him back quarterbacking the Bears. That's my hope as a Packers fan. But, all right, my number for Vanderbilt is turnover margin. For a team that's a little smaller in the paint, this is critical for what Byington wants to do in terms of winning shot volume or competing there. And last year, they were 17th in the country in turnover margin. That makes a lot of sense to me with the way Chris Magnon was such an incredible pressure guy, wreaked havoc in their press. And then also you had Jason Edwards as a really high volume scorer that had a low turnover rate. And they do bring back McLaughlin and Tyler Nickel, who had minuscule turnover rates for their usage and just the amount of offensive impact they made. But I'm looking at the newcomers here. Like, does Frankie Collins continue that? I think he's been a little turnover prone and erratic with his decision making, but he does make up for it with steals on the other end. Tyler Tanner is a complete demon on the ball. And then like Duke Miles, is he going to be able to have that kind of defensive impact on the game? Like Magnon was such a singular talent to put in a pressing system. I don't know that they quite have that, but hey, Hogard's sort of erratic playmaking is also gone. I think this is probably going to stay at really strong levels, but is it going to be all the way up into nationally elite, which I think is probably where it needs to be for them to finish 5th and be like a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? That's my ultimate question with them. Just how incredible is that turnover margin?
Yeah, I was going to say Frankie Collins is a 2-way turnover machine for better and for worse. The key here actually for me is from their 5s. So last year, Jalen Carey, 17.7% turnovers. That's not bad at all for a center. McLaughlin, 10.6%. Yeah. That's really damn strong. I do worry a little bit about that with like Jalen Washington. I guess it depends on like how much you like Jalen Washington. I could see the argument that he was just in like the wrong system for him at UNC and could be better here. We'll see with like a Mason Nicholson if he plays much. He had a pretty good turnover rate last year, but like there are definitely guys here where Washington especially, and even like Okereke from Cornell, however you say it, like I worry a little bit about that affecting things because I think the backcourt's totally fine in this regard. but the front court could see a little bit of a jump in turnover percentage just because it was so low last year.
Yep, exactly. Man, just the nickel thing's crazy. Like he's just going to fire up a three and will never give the ball to the other team. That's pretty nice to have a guy that can shoot 40% on high volume and not take anything away from your offense that way. All right, number 6, Arkansas. You've already kind of taken a little swipe at John Calipari on this episode and his stylings and the roster build that he had last year. What do you think of this year's team, and what number are you zoomed in on?
It seems so silly to bring this up again with them, but 3-point percentage. It's my first question looking at this roster. So collectively, the D1 members of this roster, not counting the freshmen, shot 31.8% from deep. I would argue that is not good enough, especially for a program with aspirations that Arkansas has, where they've got designs on getting back to the Final Four. Been a while. Even adding in the shooting numbers for the last calendar year that I could find on Synergy for Acuff and Malik Thomas, that got them to about 33.5%, which is still below the national average of 33.8. I don't think Arkansas needs to be this elite shooting team, but considering last year's group was the worst at 3-point percentage since 2008, 2009 Memphis for Cal, that's not great. I think you see the better Cal offenses obviously have been really dominant on the boards, which, I mean, we'll see with this group. I'm not totally sold on that one way or the other, but the Cal thing for me, they really need to get to like that 35, 36% range as a team to make the offense work. And I think on paper, I'm not really seeing it.
Yeah, you need Acuff to hit shots. You need Malik Thomas, who is reputationally willing to fire and streaky. So you need the streaks to trend towards the positive.
I mean, to that effect, like at Synergy, you can find 100 shot samples for him in like multiple, like high school, EYBL, whatever. And there's one in 100 shot sample where he shot 42% and another where he shot 33. You truly you just don't really know. Whereas Acuff was like pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah, you kind of need to pray that the truth is in the middle for him and not that it's like one of those true negative seasons where he can't make shots. And another thing too is the Brazil Knox late season stuff where both of them were really good and much better in bigger roles. Does that continue to carry over? Knox shot 42% from three in his final 12 games, 31% in the first 24. Brazil was also significantly better late in the year when he didn't have to deal with, am I going to get benched for Adutiro? He shot 39% from three down the stretch in the final 9 games. So that shows you the upside of that pairing, but that's also a small sample. And is it actually going to bear out over the whole season? That's kind of the bigger question mark. And as you mentioned, Calipari's teams are so reliant on the athleticism, is that when they also have the skill element, that's when the offense starts to look really, really good. And this one, I think, is a coin flip, whether it's actually going to happen or not.
Well, that and like, you look at how the minutes are going to be mixed up across this roster. I hate to ask, do you think DJ Wagner's good?
No, I've been super out on DJ Wagner for years.
Okay, because I felt like I was taking crazy pills seeing some of these previews for like DJ Wagner, all SEC contender. I'm like, are you sure about that?
No, yeah, I'm
I thought he was good in the Kansas game.
Yes,
I thought he was like quite good in that, and then was like horrendous against St. John's and ended up not mattering, but also not very good against Texas Tech. Like, I mean, he didn't really have a late season breakout like the others did. 26% from three in conference play. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the recruiting profile still gives you hope, but
yeah, we got 3 years of not great evidence. Last year he was 30th percentile in net rating. The year before he was first percentile. Like they were just so
improvement.
Yeah, exactly. But if your improvement is the team is still clearly demonstrably worse without me or with me on the floor, that's not what I'm looking for from Mr. Wagner, a former 5-star.
No.
All right, number 7, Will, my Tigers. My Missouri Tigers. I had a hard time with this because the defense might drive it, but I don't have a lot of faith that the gambling and lack of defensive rebounding is really going to get fixed, even with the personnel. So the stats, it's not really a true one stat, but 3-point attempt rate versus free throw rate is what I'm looking at here. They were second in the country in free throw rate last year, and they could potentially be first because they're adding Sebastian Mack to the Mark Mitchell and Anthony Robinson factory of free throws. Those guys are, I'm not going to call them foul merchants, but a hater might. Guys that really thrive by getting to the line and earning free points that way. I just don't know if they're going to have the spacing to get into gaps and to draw that kind of contact. I think last year, Caleb Grill and Tamar Bates were so gravitational and confident with unlimited range that it would draw a defender out no matter where they were on the court. And that gives you room to drive into and create that contact. I'm not sold that Jacob Cruz and Jaden Stone and Trent Pierce, even Jevin Porter, are going to have that kind of gravity, dictate the defense, and open things up for these drivers. And that's really what concerns me. If you can throw two guys at Mark Mitchell every time he's in a mid-post isolation, he's probably not going to draw as much contact. And same with Anthony Robinson trying to get downhill. That worries me. I'd love to see the defense take a way uptick and get inside the top 30 because I think the personnel really screams that it can. I'm just not sure that'll work. So I am keeping my eye fixed on the offense.
Yeah, I actually think Mac will translate out pretty well. I think having proven it in actually a pair of big conferences so far does sway me a bit on him. But yeah, I agree with all you said. I still think they're going to get a lot of free throws. I was looking before recording what game on the Missouri schedule I think will take the longest to finish. I'm going with Tuesday, January 27 at Alabama. I've got my eye set on a 2-hour, 31-minute regulation game, and that might be undercutting it.
Yep, you do not want to be playing the second window after Missouri games this year because they're going to take a long time. And as a team that was on the second window last year and consistently got interrupted by the first game going into Mizzou games, I feel bad for a lot of the late night tips that will be late tips.
That's a 9 p.m. tip too, so you're going to be up.
God.
You're going to be up for a long time.
Oh, great! Can't wait. God,
I also had a vision on Mizzou the other day. I hesitated about telling you about because I know it's going to hurt your heart. But I have to bring this up. So I had a vision the other day. It's Selection Sunday.
Okay.
Who's our guy now? It's obviously not Greg Gumbel.
Adam Zucker.
Adam Zucker. So they're announcing the bracket. I don't know what region this is, but I had a vision on my run. We've got 7 seed Mizzou. Your 10 seed, the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I would lose my mind. I can't play that McCollum system again in the Big Dance. Don't give me starts again.
It came to my brain and I was like, oh no. But I have to tell Jim.
It's especially cruel because there is a bracketing principle that's you can't. They make an effort to not have you play the same team as you did last year, but that wouldn't apply here because it's not Drake. It's actually Iowa. Ugh, barf.
Be a good color versus color matchup.
Yeah, that's true. At least the jersey matchup would please people.
One team would have to just have the inverse of the other. You could bring out the reversible jerseys.
There we go. A practice jersey game. I like that idea.
Yeah, but you just switch at halftime. You really confuse the viewing audience.
I do like the idea that Mizzou's going to get a better seed than Ben McCollum, Iowa. That's the nicest part of your vision. Other than that, it's very offensive to me.
What if you win? It's fine.
Yeah. What if Dennis Gates solves the half court patience that he had no hope of last year? Yes. Let's hope so. Okay, Tiger Nation, I'm going to move us on before I get too sad. Number 8, Will, is Auburn, now coached by Stephen Pearl, not Bruce, who is going to be an analyst, apparently. Going to be on TV talking to us about hoops, which I'm actually kind of excited for. He's a gregarious
I actually think
personality.
he's going to be very good.
Yeah.
It'll be like Tom Crean, basically.
Yeah.
Just like a little more forward. So.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What are you looking at here with Auburn with so much roster turnover other than Mr. Pettiford?
This is one of the first places I'm looking for to see if Steven's going to be any different in year one than his own father. Bench minutes. Because Bruce, famous for playing huge rotations. The 23-24 Auburn team famously had hockey shifts where they bring in the entire bench, and it was just as good as the starters. Bruce has done this his entire career. They ranked in the top 80 of bench usage nearly every season at Auburn. Very similar trend at Tennessee. I don't have data going back to the Milwaukee years, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's something similar there. I have to bring this up because, to my eyes, this is an Auburn team with a very good starting five. If it all connects, I think it works really well. Starting five could be really strong. Profoundly average bench. I just don't like a ton of what's going on. Filip Jovic could work, could not. We'll see. I think that's about as nice as I can put it. Kevin Overton, we'll see. Abdul Bashir, we'll see. There's a lot of intriguing aspects to this roster where, like, I really do like the top 4 or 5 here, but beyond that, it's questionable. And I feel like if Steven has to continue diving into the bench over and over, that's not a great sign for this specific Auburn build.
Yeah, and they like to play fast, so the depth really does help, and they can wear you down. Like going to Auburn Arena in the jungle, and when they wear you down with just the waves of bodies, that's when they just waterfall a run on you. But to your point, like Abdul Bashir played like 13 minutes in their exhibition, and Magwood didn't play that much. I think he got some real hype coming in. It was basically Sebastian Williams-Adams who stood out as the bench group. Like, okay, we've got this mobile athletic forward that can defend multiple positions. He can come in for Murphy, or he can come in for Freeman. They can play big, they can play small. That's the hope. But yeah, I'm a little worried about guard depth. I don't know if Abdul Bashir is an SEC player. In fact, I don't think he is. I'll just outright say it. I don't think he can defend at that level. He can shoot, but I don't know that he can do anything else. And then is Magwood going to be ready? If not, then the guard depth is alarmingly thin, because you also need a Division II transfer, Elijah Freeman, to look good and be a perimeter piece at 6'8". So I think this is a great call, Will, because I just don't look at this roster and see the depth. I know it's a big bit in the Discord for anybody listening. Is Auburn deep? It certainly doesn't look like it at this point, and Stephen Pearl's going to have to develop that.
And to go with that, like Keyshawn Murphy, he's never played more than 24 minutes a game in college.
Yep.
I mean, even last year down the stretch, I'm looking at his numbers for MSU. Final 4 games, this is conference tournament and onward, 19, 22, 29, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that's not bad by any stretch. And I think Keyshawn Murphy's quite good. He is a fantastic rebounder and a pretty solid rim protector for what it's worth. But we don't have much evidence that he can handle huge minutes yet. We have, evidence that he can, handle 25. But I feel like they need more from him, because there's just like not much on the bench that I'm really sold on at the 5.
Yep, he's vital. And he wasn't even starting on that Mississippi State team last year. And obviously he played like a little more closer to the majority of the minutes and was crucial. But is he going to be a 30-minute a game guy when we have no evidence of that working, and of Auburn preferring to not play their top guys that much? I question that, which is why Auburn, with some uncertainty on the sideline, is down at 8, which I don't think you'd say talent level is quite 8th even in a league of loaded talent. I think they're a little higher than that, but I think that's healthy skepticism from both Will and I on where Auburn's going to land this year. All right, number 9, Mississippi State, the aforementioned Bulldogs. I typically try not to do this, Will, but for Jans, I'm going to do it. The stat I'm looking at is defensive 3-point percentage, because his teams have actually kind of controlled it. They've been really good in his 9 years of being a head coach. Before last year, they had never been below average, whether it was at New Mexico State, Bowling Green, or Mississippi State. And the last 4 teams before last year were 8th, 36th, 20th, and 68th in defensive 3-point percentage. I think his pressure, his up the line kind of style does dictate the comfort level of the opponent a little bit. That is until last year, where opponents made almost 36%, 302nd nationally, and that really hurt the defense. And I thought about is it because they were smaller, and on average height, they were actually taller than they were the previous season, but a little less dynamic in the backcourt and on the wing, no DJ Jeffries. And now they also lose Cam Matthews, who is maybe the best defender in this conference. Apologize to everyone on Tennessee. He was a beast. And you just don't really have the go-to stoppers in this roster, unless Achora is back and ready to roll and Quincy Ballard is the dominant rim protector. But they need teams to not be as hot as they were last year and get back to the Jan's custom of really controlling the stat, because I think that's going to dictate their defensive ceiling.
Yeah, and so last year in conference play, minus 8.3% on 3-point percentage. Really hard to replicate year over year, I will say. So I think that'll come back in their favor. But to your point, a quick look through synergy does not imply that they did anything particularly different on the defensive end last year. So you do wonder if it was personnel or, like smaller backcourt, whatever. Yeah, famous flashback to them adding Kanye Clary for some reason. Um, I think it should be more in their favor this year. I'm more willing to bet on Christians than I'm not, just because of track record. But like you said, we've got to see them. I don't think they need to be back to top 40 like they usually are in defensive 3-point percentage. Just get back to like 113th. That would be a great step in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah. It's not going to be elite, but get up in that area where it's a little below national average instead of way, way above. And then offensively, like, yes, Jaden Epps is here. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like on that end, but I never really do with Jans's teams. He wins with defense, and that's why I was focused on that end and then getting back up closer to where they were nationally. Honestly, last year's roster might have been one of those overcorrections we talked about where, my God, they couldn't shoot, and they had awesome defenders, and they still weren't a great shooting team outside of Josh Hubbard last year, but there was at least a little more offensive potential, and their offense was a lot better, but they suffered a little bit defensively, and we'll see if there's a reversion back towards the typical Jans team.
Yeah, I do think the build of this team makes a little more sense for me, especially offensively. Epps is whatever. I like Jabari McGee. I think he's a pretty solid 3 for this group. But a lot does depend on Achor, like getting somewhat back to form.
Yep. All right, number 10, Will, is Texas. As you mentioned, one of the teams that was slightly below average last year, and they decided to move on from Rodney Terry experiment and now have Sean Miller in charge. What number is driving the Longhorns' outlook to you?
Well, it's a Miller-specific one that doesn't line up with Texan history. It's defensive rebounding. Do you know Sean Miller's teams last 14 years, 13 times they've been in the top 80 of defensive rebounding percentage. They control the boards exceptionally well. I would deem this pretty important because would you like to know the last time Texas touched top 80 in this stat?
That doesn't sound like a real Shaka staple, especially because he likes to pressure.
Nope.
When Rick Barnes was there?
Rick Barnes' final season in 2014-2015, they have ranked at or below the national average in defensive rebounding for 10 straight seasons.
Yikes.
So Vocatitis and Lucina Traore should really help in this regard. Both bring about some real spacing concerns for a roster that's already pretty thin on what I would call plus shooting. I think they have shooting, but not like great shooting. I don't think there's like a lot of, there's no Trey Johnson on this roster, obviously. Yep. But defensively, it makes sense. I think if they can get back to controlling the defensive boards, that gives them an identity. And that is good for a program that fully lacked in having any identity under Rodney Terry.
Yeah, an interesting, like Kendall Weaver rebounded like a 6'9" power forward last year. And I think he'll probably fit the scheme very well. As you mentioned, Vocatitis, Traore, 2 really good rebounders on a per minute basis. And compared to last year when Arthur Kaluma was like the only defensive rebounder they had, Shedrick didn't carry he was more shot blocker than he was rebounder. I think this is an open question for this team. Dalen Swain should be solid in that regard, and I think I can see defensive upside with him as such a malleable piece, but you got to finish possessions. And I do think maybe like Declan Duru plays bigger minutes, the German guy who was really good in FIBA stuff this offseason. And Heidi's a great athlete. It's just I'm so intrigued by some of these Purdue guys outside of the Purdue scheme, how they end up looking. But Sean Miller's defense has got to find a way to do that and really break the mold of the historical Texas trend.
They make a lot of sense to me this year as like a change-up team where the SEC's gauntlet is already brutal, but like I think of like a Vanderbilt coming in there on a Wednesday, or like Florida comes in on a Wednesday. It's a strange team to try and prep for on short notice. So I kind of wonder, like, could they steal one you don't think they should at home this year?
Yeah, probably. I think they will. Just the SEC, they'll probably get like
averages and whatnot.
A schedule win too, where it's like, oh, a team just played at Auburn, at Tennessee. It's their third straight road game. They go down to Austin, and that's one that they become vulnerable at.
This is Jesus, man. I'm looking at their road schedule. Can I read this off to you really quick?
Please do.
They're not going to be a favorite in any of these games. At UConn, December 12th. At Tennessee, January 6th. At Alabama, January 10. At Kentucky, at Auburn, at Oklahoma, at Mizzou, at Georgia. I could hear an argument on that. At A&M, at Arkansas.
God, they play just
Brutal.
like all the good teams on the road.
Brutal draw to not get like a South Carolina or an LSU on the road.
You better win at home then, because it's going to be really tough to steal ones on the road. This is interesting. It's Texas is a team I've picked as like a surprise to miss the tournament this year, and I hadn't even looked at the schedule, and now it makes sense.
Brutal. Law of averages, you'd think they'd steal like 2 of those 10, but that's going to require them to win as a road dog, which I mean, sorry, Sean Miller's not traditionally been very good at that.
Yeah, so. And last year's team kind of left me feeling cold, didn't live up to their potential kind of squad. So needs to probably get to or exceed the potential of this team to firmly entrench themselves in the NCAA tournament. All right, let's go to the other side of the Red River rivalry for number 11. Red River shootout. It's the shootout, folks. Oklahoma. Correct. Porter Moser at the helm. The number I'm looking at, Will, is 2-point percentage defense. Typically a major strength of a Moser team, kind of like the 3-point percentage with Jans. But last year was awful for this team. They fell to 324th in 2-point percentage defense, 55% opponent shot, 312th nationally in block rate. There wasn't somebody that, was dictating what the defense or what the opponent was doing. It's the worst mark in the last decade for Moser. The next lowest was 50.3%. So from 50.3 to 55 is a major swing in this category. Mo Wagi is not like, he doesn't move me as a major interior rim protector, and the Xavier Brown, Nigel Pack backcourt could get beat off the bounce a lot. So you really need a strong season from Tay Davis, Darian Reed, who I really like the defensive potential of that 3-4 combination. And you desperately need healthy seasons from Nwankwo and Jaden Jones, 2 guys who missed the entire year last year that bring a lot of defensive versatility to the lineup, stuff that they just did not have last season. So if you can get those guys healthy, it really helps. But with Wagi at the base of it, not a ton of backup options that intrigue me. This could end up being another bit of a weakness for an Oklahoma team that I've slowly but surely been cooling on, despite being really high on them early in the offseason.
This is a contender for the TikTok team of the SEC, where you just see the offensive highlights and you're like, oh, that's a top 20 team in the sport. And then you're like, but then like the 13-year-olds watching the video don't understand that you have to play defense too. Wagi is like, I like him. I'm just not convinced he can stay on the court for very long. Jaden Jones, really do like him on that end too. But the problem, I mean, we are now in year 4 of Wagi, however you say it. 21.9% of available minutes, 18.7%, and 27.9% across 3 schools. The highest minute total he had last year is 28 against UConn, which that's a good sign that they trusted him that much, but that's also a sign of like, we have no other options. You look at his SEC play, especially as OU is slumping, like 12 minutes against Auburn, 13 against UT, 8 against Mizzou, 12 against LSU, 8 against Florida. This is just not a guy that I'm convinced can hold up to big minutes. And if he can't stay out there, I have no idea who protects the rim on this team. There's definitely not an option I really like, I would say. So the problem is like offensively, I could see where this team finishes top 20 in offensive efficiency. I'm struggling really bad to see a scenario where this team finishes like top 60 defensively.
Yep, it's very scary. You got to like hope that the Porter Moser defensive infrastructure plays up here, and as mentioned, the 2 guys that were hurt last year actually really add to it. I don't remember if you actually exactly explicitly stated it, but you're talking about Wagi staying on the floor. It's because his foul rates through his 3 years in his college career are 7.8 per 40 minutes, 10.1 per 40 minutes, and 9.0 per 40 minutes. I mean, this guy lives in foul trouble. It's been the case his entire career. the fact that he even played 28 minutes against UConn is stunning to me, that he was able to get up that high, because he's typically on the bench at some point with 3 fouls in the first half. But they're going to need him to play big minutes because there aren't a lot of alternatives. Otherwise, they're going small and they're going to get scored on quite a bit.
Can I give you a truly nasty comparison here?
Uh-oh.
Euros Plavsic with better SEO.
Oh, God. And hopefully less.
He's better than that.
Less harmful
like,
elbow swings.
Yeah, less harmful to everyone else on the court, himself and others combined. But I feel like I've actually spent a lot of this offseason thinking he would play 20, 24 minutes a game. And then as I'm diving into him, I don't know that he can stay out there that long. And 20 minutes is not that much on a given night.
No.
So, yeah, who's stopping the ball? Because the backcourt sure isn't. I don't really love Darion Reed. I think he's fine. But I don't really want Jaden Jones out there for offensive purposes. I don't know, man. This is defensively, this is a nasty roster.
Yep. It's going to have to play very conservative, and that lowers the ceiling. There's almost no way they're going to be awesome. Can they find a way to be okay? And that's going to be the mark of it for them. All right, next up, back to you, Will. Number 12, Ole Miss, the fighting Chris Beards. They were really good defensively last year, despite I kind of was skeptical of the personnel, and they proved me wrong in a big way. But what are you looking at this year with a basically brand new roster after they were so veteran heavy last year?
I was strongly skeptical last year, and I got put in the dirt. So one thing I'm really looking for here is not like a specific game-to-game stat, but maybe season-long point guard minute split. I don't. So Keza Jiffa, obviously very good offensively, little jitterbug, a lot of fun to watch on that end. I don't like him in the slightest as a defensive piece. I think he is awful too rude.
No, outright bad seems fair.
Outright terrible. The problem is that Corin Johnson, I'm seeing him in starting lineups, and okay, but he's had one good two-way year in his college career, and it was in a Washington system that is a completely different style of ball. This was the final Mike Hopkins season, actually. Completely different to this style of what he's going to play for Ole Miss. I don't love either option here, and I'm not seeing anything else amazing in the backcourt that can run point. So you might have to have more point forward minutes like they had last year with Malik Dia, Jamin Brakefield, et cetera, et cetera.
You're not a Travis Perry guy?
Not particularly. I've been higher on some players. Maybe, this could be the AJ story here at point. Ooh. I'm sure everybody's just ripping their pants off for AJ Store. I think Chris Beard is pretty brilliant as an on-court tactician, roster builder, what have you. But this is the third year in a row where I've been just completely baffled at what he's going for.
You were right once.
I think he'll get a lot out of it.
He was right once.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was right one time. I was right the other. So 50-50 success rate. How Beard chooses to use each of these players, Jiffa and Johnson, is going to tell us a lot about what he thinks this team really is. If he thinks it's defense first, you're obviously going to play Johnson a lot more and just rely on that end and hope for the best and try and, grit out some games in an ugly fashion. If he thinks this is an offense first team, which I personally don't, you're going to play Jiffa a lot at point, ride him, and just try and hide him as best as you can, along with Cameron on the defensive end. TBD on that front.
And the one other option I would be open to them exploring is playing Cameron at point. He's kind of combo-y in France, but they don't have the wing depth to do that. Where then you have AJ Store, then who's playing the 2 and the 3 minutes when Cameron's at the 1? Is it Eduardo Klafke? Is it Patton Pinkins, who I don't really know that much about? Top 100 freshman. They're not even one of their top 3 or top 2 freshmen coming in. That's concerning to me, and not having that solved and having 3 roster spots invested in Jiffa, Perry, and Johnson, and not being overly confident in any of them, that sets up for uncertainty. And to your point, I could see them scrambling with different lineup choices for the first 2.5 months of the year, where they're just trying to figure out who works best with who, what is our identity as a team, and until they figure that out, it's probably going to look a little bit messy. Although they beat Houston in a secret scrimmage, we're told. So
I don't want to be unfair to our boy Armand, and so I should point out I'm higher on Cameron than either Johnson or
yeah,
Jiffa.
he rocks.
At least, yeah, he's really good. But like you said, if you play him at point and you bench Johnson and Jiffa, I mean, are you running out a lineup of like James Scott and Malik Dia together? That concerns me a bit.
Yes. Yeah, there's just like not a ton of malleable wing pieces where you can play big or small. It's you need one of those 3 point guards to play because what else is the rotation on the perimeter outside of them?
Yeah.
All right, to number 13, Texas A&M, which is I believe one of the highest teams on our league pass rankings for both of us, and just a fascinating team with the buckyball style and the late build. I wrote down how buckyball is buckyball going to buckyball. Just I don't. How extreme is this going to be? So the stat I guess I'll lean on for that is defensive turnover rate, because he has had some seasons where it wasn't this like chaotic, frenetic defensive style. His first 2 years at Samford, he had a 20-game winner where Samford was 216th in forced turnover percentage, 75th in pace. It wasn't like this crazy up and down lunatic style that I think people have in their head of what buckyball is. And I think he's smart enough to know that playing that at this level in arguably the most athletic conference in the entire country might not end up working altogether that well, especially because I don't think this roster is fully built for it. His roster build was late in the process because when he got the job and he basically was just like, all right, I'm going to take the closest things to SEC players I can find. Like Jakari Lane, Pop Isaacs, Federico, Rashawn Agee, Mackenzie Mbako. Like there's some good players in that group. I just don't know that they're all designed to press 94 feet and play in shifts of like 2 different lineups that are forcing steals. I think they got to be a little bit more conventional. And I trust him to make the right decision there, but I'm just curious to see how it ends up looking. Is it going to be this press system where he tries it early and then has to pull back on the reins, or what stylistic choice does he make right away?
So the interesting thing with the buckyball to me, and you don't really get this impression watching from afar and hearing the way people talk about it. It's kind of in a way, and I'm not trying to say this exactly, but like a type of flat track bully, where as a favorite in over the last 3 years at Samford, they were 60-12, beat their spread by about 1.5 points on average. Very good, like very strong, best in the conference. As an underdog, Samford 5-15, worst ATS in the conference on average. This matters to me because, again, we're going to do a little SEC schedule reading for you. Their 9th road game is LSU, whatever. These are their first 8 in conference play. Auburn, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Those are your road games. They could easily go 1-7 or 0-8 on the road against that pack. I think that they're going to get a couple in the home games, especially because some of these set up quite well. Like the Texas home game, they should fare fairly well in. Like you get Oklahoma, but it's tough when you have that sort of flat track mentality. Like most of their home games, they're going to be favored in, maybe outside of Florida, UK, and possibly like Mizzou in mid-February. But most of the road games are going to be underdogs in. So I have a hard time kind of seeing this team as anything other than it is, which is like they're probably going to smoke Q4s and some Q3s and really struggle against Q1s and Q2s.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely outcome as well. It's just if you're gonna, as you mentioned, be so awesome as a favorite and sometimes overwhelmed with athleticism, depth, and talent, where does that get you when you're facing the best athleticism, depth, and talent in the country in the SEC? It's a little bit odd. And I think, Texas A&M is gambling, the administration is gambling on just a brilliant coach that's won at every level. But this is a new level, tougher level, and he's going to have to maybe take time to figure out what his approach is against this caliber of competition.
And we're actually going to get a really good early test of this. So November 9th, they play at Oklahoma State. I know people are going to be really torn up to skip on, say Saints Panthers that day. You might be really upset to miss out on Jaguars Texans. I know it's gonna like rip your soul out to like, oh, you can't watch Steelers Chargers. That would really suck.
Oh man,
But I know that really just grinds my gears. Did you know there's another effing 9:30 game that day?
is it every week this year?
I feel like it is.
Yeah.
Like, so here's my quick aside. I wanted to bring this up with you. You're not going to know, and I don't know. Do they leave Eisen and Warner there just for weeks, considering they have a 9:30 game like every single week now?
I
Did they just take up residence in London?
maybe they shouldn't because we saw what happened when Mark Sanchez just got out drinking too often. Let's not let that happen to either of those guys. Maybe I guess they are older, more seasoned hands,
Yeah.
but don't get caught
We're
in.
saying Texas. Are you saying Texas A&M might have a Mark Sanchez moment on November 9th?
God, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I feel like I've wrapped myself into a pretzel with this analogy, but yeah, let's tune into that game because it's going to be two coaches that played super high pace in their mid-major teams, and now they're going to be playing each other. And will they just kind of like have a handshake agreement between Lutz and McMillan of let's just go go go? I think that game could be a first to 95 wins it.
Yeah, could be really fun. 2 p.m. Eastern that day.
Okay, yeah, I can
Put it in your calendar.
I can table the afternoon slate of NFL for that. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. All right, number 14. This is the start of our final tier on our basket under review rankings. Georgia, South Carolina, LSU. I'm kicking it to you for the Bulldogs. Will Mike White made the tournament last year and was unceremoniously disposed of by another Bulldogs. What happens with Georgia this year, and what are you looking at?
Strangely enough, 3 specific players. I want to see the collective 3-point percentage of Marcus Millender, Jeremiah Wilkinson, and Justin Bailey. So combined last year at 3 different schools, 3 different systems, all of that, 39.2% from deep. If you're just looking at that on surface value, you might think, hey, this UGA offense is going to be really improved. They should have some major boosts from backcourt shooting. Again, a little bit of an overcorrection from last year where they didn't have much of any shooting. And it was kind of like, Asa Newell bail us out, or on the rare nights where Blue Cane was really smoking it, Blue Cane bail us out. I don't think those options are going to exist this season. I think like they should be solid defensively as usual. I don't totally hate what they're doing on the defensive end. I think it should work. Like maybe again, this is a year like Cannon Catchings finally figures it out for 4 months. We'll see. But the story is really going to be told between Millender, Wilkinson, and Bailey. If they can even get close to 39% collectively, I do think Georgia could make the tournament. Like they'd have the backcourt shooting depth. They'd have better guard depth than White has had in any year at Georgia so far. Probably better than his last couple at Florida, I would argue, if it all comes together. But in the more likely event it doesn't, there's some sort of like scaling up issue, especially with Millender and Bailey coming from lower leagues, and Wilkinson to an extent coming from the ACC, which is less stout defensively. If it hovers around like 33, 34%, Georgia could be an even worse watch than they were last year.
Ooh.
And we're already pretty down on them. I don't think they're going to make the tournament. This is another deal of like somebody has to lose games in the SEC. If they're not able to shoot, I just don't know what Georgia's plus skill is on this roster.
Yeah, because I think they've lost the identity of last year of the like physical dominance in the paint. I think Cyril is going to be great at that, and they still got Absent and Dylan James, but Newell was so instrumental to it. Having like 5 big men was instrumental to it, where they could just wear you down in the paint. And now it's a little more perimeter centric with Catchings. The perimeter group, the guards are smaller. You don't have Silas Demery as like a big bully on the ball at 6'5". It's just kind of incrementally less than what this team was last year, with a new identity that I think is less interesting and less upside. Yeah, I'm skeptical as well. Perhaps they make enough shots to cancel out some of those trade-offs, but I don't personally see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 15. I was surprised to have South Carolina ahead of LSU here. Gamecock fans, you can send your care packages to Will's door. You are not dead last year, but the one I'm looking at here is offensive turnover rate. Lamont Paris is coming out of the Bo Ryan, Wisconsin assistant tree. So for years, his best teams are the ones that take care of the ball, and all Wisconsin teams take care of the ball, but that has not been the case of Lamont Paris teams. you can sort of draw a straight line between his best teams and their turnover rate. Like at South Carolina, he's had 3 teams. They've ranked 294th, 75th, and 266th in offensive turnover rate. I'll let you guess which one made the NCAA tournament. It was the middle squad. And then even at Chattanooga, his first 2 teams were super sloppy. Suddenly they get a upturn in taking care of the ball, and his final team ranks 78th in turnover rate and makes the NCAA tournament, vaults him into this job. Yes, they get Michi Johnson back in the fold. That is helpful, should help correct things, and having an experienced ball handler in this system. But I think Isandako is going to cough the ball up constantly in the front court. He is a sloppy decision maker. I'm not sure what to think of Mike Sheriff-Jumps coming into the SEC. Eli Ellis, I think, is going to have major struggles as a freshman, given his insistence on doing a lot of things with the basketball, and now he's playing the best athletes in college hoops. Cam Scott was a little loose with it last year. That all worries me, and I think this turnover rate's not going to be that sharp, and that's going to drag down South Carolina in general.
I would agree. I don't expect much from turnovers offensively or defensively. I think there'll be a slight negative on the whole. The reason why I'm going to defend myself here.
Oh, hey.
Because I'm being canceled for truth. They've removed me from streaming services. I have them 15th because 1, I think Lamont Paris is a better coach than Matt McMahon, and 2, I think of the 4 available units here, South Carolina's defense actually does kind of work for me. They should have a pretty stout back end with
Esandoko, yeah.
Yeah, whatever, who cares? I don't think that they're going to foul a ton, which I like. Like I said, I like the back end. I even think on the perimeter, Michi can be pretty stout. When he's engaged, he can be pretty annoying defensively. And there's some bench pieces here, like Kobe Knox, I can kind of talk myself into. I can, get into some of that. Like, I can't believe Miles Studi still has eligibility. Just baffling to me.
Yes.
Capich, however you say it, they need to we need a supercut of all the times I've mispronounced something. But Capich, really good defender of space. I have to admit, I understand he's probably dropping down in terms of systems, but I'm just betting on anybody who played for UC San Diego last year, because that's just like a once in a generation collection of smart basketball players, just like extraordinarily high IQ, really good dudes. Even like Jordan Butler is at a backup center. But they're 15th for a reason. I don't understand why we're still doing the Mongolian Mike thing. I didn't really need it.
He is the idea of him is so much cooler than the player.
That would be a great all-star team of idea guys. You're like, oh, if he just did this, he'd be awesome.
Yeah, a 6'9" point guard, that's great. But he turns it over and can't shoot and isn't actually all that good defensively. Okay, well then wait a second.
The idea all-stars is a Bill Simmons idea for sure. I can't believe we haven't had
the gears are turning in Will's head, folks. He's already writing the article and mentally at this point.
Tremont Mark, idea all-star.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're building the team. Maybe that'll be a future episode, or next offseason we'll have to come up with that.
Yeah.
But yes, South Carolina settles in at 15th. Also, one other key stat, Will, 1-0. That is the number of lottery picks that they had to the number of lottery picks that they now have. So no more Colin Murray Boyles. That is a big change for a team that couldn't even elevate with him in the fold. All right.
Yeah.
Number 16, I cede the floor to you. The Bayou Bengals, the LSU Tigers, Matty McMahon's squad. Is it his swan song? And what is the number you're looking at for them?
I think it is. The thing here I'm looking for, and I'm trying to figure out the exact way to phrase this, but field goal attempt split. So I'm going to read you the points per game of the starting 5 that we've got in the Basket Under Review preview. This is Deaton Thomas Jr., Max McKinnon, Rashad King, Markel Sultan, Jalen Reed. This is the points per game for each. 15.6, 14.5, 18.5, 18.9, 11.1. This is a classic points per game accumulator roster where if you look at like that transfer portal account on Twitter, you're like, oh my God, LSU's loaded. They're going to be good this year. And then you look at what LSU actually is and you're like, holy shit, this team sucks. And I'm trying not to be rude about it, but like you have 4, arguably 5 with Reed. Arguably, well, no, not a 6 with Pablo Tamba. But like he was like a number 2, number 3 option on UC Davis. You have arguably 5 guys who are the alpha on their team last year on 5 completely different systems, 5 completely different coaching staffs, 5 totally different roles. If a different coach, perhaps one named Chris Beard, were organizing this, I might listen. I might sit my white ass down and listen. But I'm not with this. So if you can tell me with full confidence who of Thomas, McKinnon, King, Sutton, or Reed is leading this team in shot attempts, I either admire your intelligence or admire your foolhardiness, because I have stared at this for an uncomfortable amount of time and can't figure it out myself. And that bodes really poorly for me for a team that already doesn't fit well defensively. I don't hate Robert Miller or Jalen Reed. I think both are pretty decent players. And Michael Nwoko coming over from Mississippi State actually does form a front court that I think will be good on the whole. Like I can see enough defensively there to cause some issues for teams driving downhill, but offensively, this is just such a janky fit that I can't figure out who will take shots, how they will get shots. Like is anybody going to be happy?
No,
on this roster?
No, because they probably won't be happy because they're not winning games either. But
well, yeah,
yeah, it's accumulation of talent. Like Markel Sutton coming from the Summit, whose strength there was like out athleting guys at the 4. I think that's going to be a problem in the SEC. Like Max McKinnon's coming from the WCC, and he's really athletically limited. Thomas is small. I'm with you. The Miller Reed, if Reed's fully healthy, front court is good and something that's going to be a problem for teams to deal with. But how much do they get fed by the perimeter guys? Like, Thomas is a good passer. Is he going to like be totally pass first given the salary I think he's making? It's all kind of a jumble of, I'm hoping I can put together some talent and production, but is it actually SEC caliber? Is it the athleticism at this level? I'm with you. I fear that it's kind of come to the end of the line, and you've written some articles about guys who exceed or don't exceed preseason expectations at KenPom, and at LSU, McMahon's been one of the ultimate like come up short to where they were projected type of coaches.
And I will note, so in the preview, there are actually 2, strangely enough, 2 Murray State coaches, former, that have parallels to this with totally divergent outcomes. So on one hand, you have Billy Kennedy. So through 3 years at A&M, hadn't finished above 500 in conference play or above 95th in KenPom. Year 4, they go 11-7 in the SEC. He saved his job. On the other hand, another former Murray State coach, Steve Prohm, at Iowa State, 4-14, 9-9, and 5-13 in conference play. McMahon, 2-16, 9-9, 3-15. You know, entering year 4, the COVID year, 67th, they had a completely different roster, one of the oldest in America. Total disaster. You know, 0-18 in Big 12 play. I definitely lean more towards that being the truth. I don't think that they're going to go 0-18 in the SEC, but somebody has to lose games, and this has real, like, serious flop potential to me where it could be over really fast. And it's already like, I don't know how many LSU games you had the misfortune of watching, but a real bummer watching their home games. Like everything in that arena is outdated. They have the same McDonald's ad on the sideboard that they had from 15 years ago.
My God.
It's like, it's clearly made in PowerPoint. And so they just like, I don't know if they press a slide or whatever. I'm not a graphics guy, but it's the exact same ad from 10 to 15 years ago. They don't even update that for basketball games.
Yeah, that's a problem. You want a little bit more attention to detail or
effort.
Yeah, effort. That's a great.
Now the problem with all of this that I had to touch on before we go, they might have to fire their football coach soon, and that is not going to be cheap. So I don't know what McMahon's contract looks like off the top of my head, but I'm wagering it's fairly cheap to get out of. But if you're already spending $50 million to get out of a football deal, basketball is going to fall by the wayside pretty quick.
Yep. Yep, unfortunately, true, and that's kind of the life of a SEC team right now. Like they've been so good the last couple of years, but if they're not able to give as much money to basketball and have to funnel it to football to compete, do we see some of the fall off in the roster, or is it just going to be a lot of under the table bags in McDonald's bags?
Really bad when you're the autocomplete on Google is Matt McMahon buyout followed by Matt McMahon LinkedIn. That's brutal.
Yikes!
You don't want
That's
that.
a bad autofill.
So it's 6.1 million. That's not that bad.
Okay, that's doable. Yeah.
But like Brian Kelly's buyout, for example, if they have to fire him at the same time, is $58 million.
Yeah,
So
that's tricky. All right, well, let's wrap this with our the way we wrap all of these. How many teams will go to the NCAA tournament from this group of 16 when last year 14 of them did? And how many will wear white in the opening round, which is to say 1 through 32 and a 1 through 8 seed in this conference? What say you?
I'm going to go with a slight reduction in tournament workforce. I'm going to go to 11 teams make it. So my 1 through 11, I'm going to say Ole Miss just misses, A&M's out, etc. But I'm going to err on the side of Oklahoma and Texas both get in, probably in that first 4 range. Yeah, I'd go with 11. I don't think 14 will ever happen again unless they get to 20 or 24 teams. It's really freaking hard to do that.
Yep. Even with the field expanding to 76, it's going to be massively difficult to do that just because you need every team to win and lose the right games, and you can't be 5-13 or whatever. I know they had a 6-12 team make it last year, 2 of them, in fact. But yeah, I'm going with you. It's 11 for me. Texas is one of the odd teams out that I don't think quite sneaks in. But man, yeah, it's just a lot of really good teams here. There's good coaches, and I still think they're going to see double digits, even if it's not 14. And how many did you say home jerseys in the first round?
I am going to lean towards 8 with home jerseys. So my top 8 here: Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. I feel very safe about all of those 4. I would have a hard time seeing a scenario where any of those are not at least an 8 seed.
Yep.
Beyond that, I feel good about Vandy, Arkansas. I think Mizzou's floor is high enough to get there, and I'm going to bet on Auburn making it. I don't love their makeup or their coaching situation or much about what's going on, honestly, but it should be enough in year 1. I don't think that the Pearl leaving effect is going to hit until years 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, that's probably fair, and there's still that carryover of his imprints on the program. Interestingly, for this, I have 6 teams in my top 27 of the way I rate, and it's all round numbers, so it's either a number or a 0.5. So there's a lot of ties. I have 5 teams tied for 31st. So like right on the cusp of this threshold. So I guess by math, I'll say 7 are wearing home jerseys in the first round, which puts 4 teams in the 9 through 11. That's a really tough needle to thread, but that's what I'm going to go with. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it here.
This is a lock conference to have at least 2 teams get in that everybody's mad about.
Into the tournament, yeah, because they went 7-11 in the SEC, and we're just sick of those teams making the tournament.
Yeah, you can already tell, like, people are going to be really annoyed that Texas got in.
Yeah, and they'll in Mississippi State will be first 4 out. They'll have gone 6-12 in the SEC, and people are like, that team's going to be in when they expand the tournament. Do we really need to see more of that?
Texas A&M is the 76th team.
Yeah, exactly. Get excited for it, folks. Get excited. All right, that is our SEC preview. Will, any final parting words for the listeners before we send them on their way? Next week, I will tease, is our take purge. So anything we just need to get off our chest before the upcoming season. We are done with conference previews. It's just going to be hot stuff coming off of our plates here.
Steaming takes is what we're going for.
Yes.
Don't read too much into that phrasing. I think that this and the Big Ten are the only. Let's go Big 12 too. So 3 conferences I think are total stone cold locks to give you not just one but multiple really good games every single night they take the court. And these are the 3 conferences you're going to really want to be attuned into if you're like say a neutral fan or like, looking for, just games to watch, like the SEC is going to provide this year.
Yep.
Even LSU and South Carolina, which neither of us are high on, will play good teams. And as we saw last year, will probably beat a good team or two.
Yeah, I think I said this on the 3-man weave SEC preview, but South Carolina's home results last year were like awesome for a team that lost every game. They lost to Auburn by 3, Florida by 1, Mississippi State in OT, 4 to Texas A&M, 4 to Mississippi. Like all those teams wore white in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And South Carolina gave every one of them hell on their home floor. And then they also beat Texas and Arkansas. So like that, there's no easy games.
Funny bet. Exceptionally funny bet for Arkansas to lose to both LSU and South Carolina.
Yeah. It seemed like that was going to have them on their way out. I mean, they got murdered by South Carolina. Like it was not close. First half, they were down like 40-12 or something, as I recall, and found their way to the Sweet 16. So, March can be mad. All right, that is it for us here at Stats by Will and Jim. Thank you to Trilly, our overlord, for giving us the platform. Thank you to Corey Aldis, our producer, for making it sound good. Thank you to Sam, our graphics guy, for getting us all set up in that department. Shout out to Homefield as well. Make sure to use promo code Burner15 if you haven't made a purchase there yet. But that's it. We'll see you back here next week for the take purge, and we'll certainly be workshopping those takes in the Discord. So if you have not joined yet, make sure you join Basket Under Review. Only $10 a month. It's going to be well worth it during the upcoming college hoop season. So that is it. We'll see you again next week.